We're back to the Neil Haley Show in the Total Celebrity segment, and I'm excited to welcome to the program Patty Schemel, from the drummer of the rock band Hole. Patty, thanks for calling, and I know this is an exciting time for you with your memoir just being released on Halloween. The book hit so hard. Was it challenging for you to write this book? I know that you there was a documentary before that, but was this difficult for you to finally write this on paper?
Yeah, it was difficult to revisit the harder moments in the memoir traces my life as a drummer, but also my drug addiction, and so a lot of that stuff was difficult, and so I would on the days of writing that, those days were hard to step back into my life today. But I'm glad that it's completed. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that when you think about the writing it down, it's supposed to be a good way to release and let go a lot of your tension, a lot of your problems by writing that down. It's kind of a closure in certain ways. People always say either you're going to write it or you got to talk to somebody about your problems. But then reliving them kind of is another part of that process. And so you talked about drug addiction. What do you think the stress of being on the road led to the drug addiction? What do you think was the big thing that led to that drug addiction?
I know that I was predisposed to being a drug addict before I ever set foot in on a stage or in a band. I from my first drink at 12 years old. So and that was my go-to whenever things got stressful, or I celebrated with it and then I commiserated with it. It was like my go-to for everything. So when I started playing music professionally, when things got a little intense and and I was on the road, I would just lose myself in alcohol and then eventually heroin. So and then on that sort of horrible hamster wheel of being getting strung out, going on tour, and then just constantly trying to chase that high in between shows.
And the popularity of the band Hole at that time, the challenge was it's a new genre of music. I remember watching this on CNN. I remember the music for sure, but it kind of going back and reminiscing about it. That it was a dark period of time in music. So specifically, it's not the happy-go-feel type of tour. You're going from town to town, and there are lots of people in a struggling mode that are struggling. Your fans are struggling in some sort of way. So that was part of that challenge of that style, and to live that image 24 hours a day, because that's what a rock star does. Yeah,
I don't know if it was necessarily about a darkness, but more about what I think about when, let's say, when Nirvana broke out. I think Kurt's lyrics were really honest, and it wasn't. It's definitely not pop music, and talking about stuff that people could relate to, and that honesty, was sometimes dark, and I just think it was sort of like it spoke to a generation. Everyone was saying, "Yeah, I feel like that too," and that was that's what the 90s, the grunge was sort of that representation of those feelings. Yeah.
And the 80s were different than the 90s for sure. And it kind of changed it really kind of, as you said, the music finally started to tell what really the struggles that teenagers were going through, what young adults were going through. And before that, it was kind of like the 80s were a happy-go-feely. They're going to talk a little about specific things, but then your genre of music, okay, we're going to really talk about how hard it is when two parents are working and they're, we might be well off, but the problem is we're never given that love. We're missing that love. And I think that's the saying of the 90s and grunge in so many ways is that you guys were looking to express yourself in music from some things that are missing in your life, right? That style.
Yeah. And it was born from punk rock, which is, not glossy, not produced, and really honest expression of anger or sadness. So, it evolved from that honesty of punk rock into grunge. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in the memoir, you talk definitely about Kurt and also Courtney and the relationship with the band and also your relationship with Kurt as well, correct?
Joined Hole when Kurt recommended me to play drums when Courtney was looking for a drummer. And that's how I started playing drums in Hole. And the book covers that beginning and that time in music in Seattle when we were all just, kids playing in bands. And then all of a sudden, Nirvana records a record and it becomes the most, popular thing in the world.
Wow. And there you go. And then you're like, oh my gosh, here we go. And you and Courtney, on that ride together, especially when Kurt and the passing of Kurt and all the challenges and how you're also finding out you're gay. There's so many different things in this process that is told in this memoir, and not enough time to get to all of it in a short interview. But Patty, what would you say was most important thing that people should get out of reading your book? What message do you want them to get from reading?
I guess it's that there is, if you're addicted to drugs and you don't see a way out, there is a way out. And it took me so many times to try to get clean and sober, but I did. And that there is hope, just some hope, and to relate, and that you're not the only one, and don't feel alone.
You're fabulous, and that's the important thing that you're looking at. The reason you wrote this book is that you want people to say you're not alone. People struggle through addiction, and the only way to get out of it is find help. Find people like yourself that were able to overcome it, people that are out there willing to help, regardless of what addiction it is. Because Patty, can be not just drug addiction, it can be alcohol addiction, it could be could be any of things of anxiety, depression, whatever kind of thing that's going on that we're struggling with. We need to ask for help, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah. Just reach out.
All right. So we can pick up your memoir, Hit So Hard, a memoir on, it's available in all finer bookstores. Patty, where's the best place we can find info on you? Where can we go?
Amazon. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Patty, thanks for calling, and people need to definitely pick this up, and it's great what you're doing to really tackle this addiction, explain what you struggled through, and so other people ask for help. So I appreciate you calling, Patty.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks. Okay, see you later. All right, bye-bye. You're listening to The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
We're back to The Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome to the program Chris Hansen from Crime Watch Daily. Chris, thanks for calling. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm great, thank you.
Fantastic. It's very interesting, your show, on how every time you really are trying to combat crime in so many ways. Kind of describe that for our listeners that not, checked you out, remembering you from the days of catching pedophiles and different things in your investigative journalism.
Well, I think what we do on Crime Watch Daily is provide something you won't catch anywhere else. in America on daytime television. I mean, we have everything from murder mysteries to investigations to Hansen versus Predator, the latest version of the Predator investigation. And we cover, breaking news, too. I mean, we're all over the Harvey Weinstein case. I was doing a segment yesterday on that, and Kevin Spacey, and all these different things that develop every day. And I think, when you get into the mind of a criminal and you hear the voice of a victim, you could prevent other people from becoming victims. And that's a big part of what this is all about, what we do on the show.
Well, definitely. When you think about specifically getting in the mind of that criminal and helping the victim, it's so key in so many ways, because the mind of a criminal, Chris, is very difficult to understand, isn't it? Especially with the certain things that can happen, especially even in Texas.
Oh, that's mind-boggling. I mean, who goes into a church and fires 450 rounds, killing some 26 people and injuring 20 more because of a dispute between his, soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law? You can talk about how he was able to get the guns and what the gun laws in Texas are and all that, but still, somebody had to go in there and light up a church during Sunday worship. And what possibly could be so wrong in somebody's mind to allow them to do that? And it's both confounding, but in a way fascinating to me, and that's why we go after these stories and try to resolve these issues and get these answers.
Come on now, he was teaching Sunday school. You never know who that criminal is, and that's why you do this show, because we cannot profile everyone. We just never know who that person's going to be in the mind and when they're going to snap.
No, we don't. And I think, with this tremendous staff I have at Crime Watch Daily, and we had a great group of reporters, and I'm out there in the field doing interviews, and, we just recently had an interview with George and Cindy Anthony, Casey Anthony's parents.
Wow, yeah.
They revealed for the first time all kinds of different things about this case and how he tried to commit suicide so he can go to heaven and be with Kaylee, his granddaughter, and find out what really happened, and how the mother regrets not taking a phone call from Casey the day of the disappearance because she was busy at work. And, we have the time to dig into these things and to get a better understanding of how these crimes happen. And we don't glorify it, but we get into it, we understand it, and yes, there's obviously an entertainment value. People watch it, people are interested in true crime, but our goal is, as I've always said, is to get into the mind of the criminal, hear the voice of the victim, and prevent other people from becoming victims, and that's a big part of what we do.
And part of also Crime Watch Daily's badge of honor is you're honoring the law enforcement, local law enforcement. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's a feature we have on the show, Badge of Honor, which is very important and a very personal mission of mine. I'll give you an example. Last week we had Oregon State Trooper Nick Cederberg on, and we profiled his case on a Christmas night. And this is a guy who's married to a woman who's a cop in Portland, Oregon. He's a state trooper. Christmas night, he gets a call about a fatal shooting. The gunman's the estranged husband of the victim. And he gets into this chase, and this gun battle, he ends up being shot 12 times. 12 times. In the last shot, the gunman points his pistol at Nick's head and misses. And I'm literally, during the interview, holding this fleece cap he was wearing with the bullet hole right on the side of it that, thankfully didn't go in his head. And his struggle to get back to normal after this horrendous gunfight. And his spirit and his commitment to being a law enforcement officer is just absolutely amazing. And I think it's important to pay tribute to guys like that. And just like the guys, the two NYPD officers in Times Square, where a guy throws what appears to be a ticking time bomb in their van, and they could have ditched and left it there. Instead, knowing they could die, they drive this van with the bomb to a less populated area to save as many lives as possible. This stuff goes on every single day with men and women in law enforcement across the country, and I think it's important that we pay tribute to that.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Chris, and we're missing the point. We're attacking law enforcement for the good things, all things, instead of looking at specifically the good things they're doing. Some police officers did the wrong thing, but most of them do a fantastic job. They're not.
And
they're
you know
not.
what?
Yeah, go.
We cover that. We cover that too. You know, it's when somebody does something wrong or there's a wrongful conviction. I mean, that's the beauty of being on 5 days a week, an hour a day, in 208 cities across America. We have the ability to cover crime and these issues like no other show.
Oh, definitely. That's fantastic. And Friday, something's coming up, too. Tell us about the story on Friday that we can tune into. Yeah.
Well, we've got a story that's really, really quite incredible about that has some exclusive interviews as well with a case that involves a woman named Victoria Rickman, a sensational case. She was charged with murdering her ex-boyfriend, a fellow named William Carter, and we have an exclusive interview with her. She claims that he was abusive, that he had raped her, and that she shot him in self-defense. But when you see how this trial goes, and as you said, it's going to be on Friday's show, it really, the twists and turns are absolutely riveting, and I think you'll be shocked by the outcome.
And what's also awesome, Chris, is, again, it's daily. The show is daily, and 22 The Point, it's on in Pittsburgh to check your local listings. But also, Chris, all over, we can also check it out all over the country as well by going where, so that we can know when it airs in our city.
Go to our website, crimewatchdaily.com, and there's a section where you can put in your zip code, and it'll tell you exactly when and where we're on in every city in America.
It must be fantastic to be able to do this, because it's something that really educates people to understand the mind of a criminal, but also what victims go through. And you really want the not have as many victims. And by highlighting this every day, you're able to show people, guess what? There are criminals everywhere. And to be on the lookout, but also to understand specifically enough. It's all that. So, Chris, thanks. Exactly.
It's to show people how not to be taken advantage of, too,
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. I think it's a different type of premise of a show, because it's looking at the mind of the criminal, but also the victim, and how we can kind of end some of this. But it's going to be very hard to do. But you have a great mission, Chris, and thanks for calling, and best of luck on your next shows, okay? Take care.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment, and I'm excited to welcome to the program the host of The Amazing Race, Phil Keoghan. Phil, thanks for calling, and I know you're excited about this project, the documentary. One thing I wanted to ask you was about your near-death experience. Some people, have watched you on The Amazing Race for so many years, but don't know about that story.
Yeah, it happened at the start of my career when I was 19. I was filming a story about a ship that sank in about 120 feet of water in New Zealand. And when you're 19, you think you're invincible. I certainly did. And I found myself deep down inside a 22,000-ton shipwreck, separated from my dive partner, drifting through massive steel ship and not knowing if I was going to get out alive or not. And I obviously survived that experience and made it a mission of mine to live by a life list. I guess today people call them a bucket list.
Right.
And I've been preparing to tick off things from that list ever since.
And that's tremendous, and that's what continues to make you want to continue to experience amazing things, as you've experienced with The Amazing Race. The countries you've traveled to, oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, the Amazing Race just seemed to line up perfectly with my philosophy, which is no opportunity wasted, my personal philosophy of living life to the fullest. And so I've been involved with Amazing Race now for 16 years, and it had perfect synergy with my personal philosophy. I love watching people take on a life-changing challenge on Amazing Race. So it all just, I guess it was meant to be.
Well, definitely this documentary coming up involving the Tour de France and talking about 1928. It's very interesting, fascinating. I have a degree in undergrad in history. And when I just started watching a little bit of the trailer,
it's just fascinating to know how much of a challenge that Tour de France was compared to today. In 1928 was just a time where it was very, very challenging to be part of that, right?
Yeah, so the Tour de France started in 1903. It really is truly, I think, the first of the big, amazing races, if you like. It's the biggest spectator sport in the world. People can see their heroes. They can get right next to their heroes on the course. And I found a story about the 1928 Tour de France, which was when the first English-speaking team rode in the Tour de France. 1 New Zealander and 3 Australians, an underdog team. There were only 4 of them, and they were racing against teams of 10. And the 1928 Tour de France happened to have the highest attrition rate of any Tour de France in history. And so I decided that my wife and producing partner and I, we decided that we would bring that story back to life. And the way we decided to do that was to get a 1928 bicycle that weighs twice as much as a modern bike does today, that has no gears and marginal brakes, and retrace every mile, stick to the schedule, ride the exact course, go through the same towns, 3,338 miles, completely circumnavigating France, and bring this story to life. And so the film was the first feature documentary shot with an F55 4K Sony camera, and so it's a visual spectacle, which is why we're so excited about sharing it with people across America on November the 9th. So we have a one-night-only screening in about 200 theaters all across America. The goal, when you make something like this and you pour blood, sweat, and tears into making an independent film like this, you want people to see it the way films are meant to be seen, which is on the big screen. Because, eventually films end up on your iPad and your TV and on the black back of a plane seat somewhere. But, when you put this much effort into making a story like this, you want people to see it on a big screen.
Absolutely, and that's why everyone needs to go ahead and check out, again, Regal's cinemas across the country Thursday, November 9th. But what I wanted to bring up, Phil, when I was watching just a little bit of this, is the fact of the challenge of people who might not even know the Tour de France today compared to retracing 1928. With that kind of bike and the challenges that they had to go through to survive, which really relates, as you said, to the Amazing Race in certain ways. And you were part of this, to be part of this history, to recreate it. It's spectacular, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I feel that in order to really communicate just how difficult it was back then, the only way to really share that with the audience is to actually go through what they went through. So they had we were riding an average of 150 miles a day. They had 7 stages over 200 miles. The death stage was over 200 miles and over 20,000 vertical feet. The winning time of that stage, which was stage 9, was 18 and a half hours. We were shooting a film at the same time as doing the ride, so we ended up taking 23 and a half hours shooting straight for 23 and a half hours to try to complete that stage. So it was a really incredible challenge, a really, really tough challenge.
A very, very tough challenge, to say the least. You're absolutely right. And how physically was it challenging on you yourself?
Well, if you'll see in the film that there were moments where we were hallucinating because we just got so exhausted. Really, really, really tough challenge. I mean, there's nothing tougher. I've never done anything tougher in my life. It was brutal. It really was brutal.
Wow. Definitely people need to check it out. So the best place so we can find out which theaters are playing this, you said 200 theaters across the country, Thursday, November 9th. Is there a website people can go to or something so that we can find info on it?
Yeah.
The theater?
Yeah, I mean, apart from just Googling it, Leride, Leride, and looking for theaters near you, the other way you could do it is you can go to us.demand.film. That's us.demand.film, and then /Leride. LE and then new word RIDE. And you'll see that it's playing in about 200 theaters across the United States. And again, I really hope people get to see it on the big screen. Eventually it'll end up on a bunch of platforms all over the place. But really, this is something that we took a lot of time and effort to make it in what is the equivalent of Super 35 millimeter film. So obviously we're keen for people to see it that way on the big screen.
And I think the Amazing Race contestants are now going to even have even greater respect for you, Phil, now because you were part of this. Because now they're saying, hey, he's gone through a lot of what we do on the show, in a way.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I think anybody who goes on Amazing Race deserves huge credit. Yeah, I think, hosting a show like that, you want to be legit. You want to be somebody that people think would be able to take on the Amazing Race as well, just so that, I'm an authentic host, I guess.
Yeah, you're definitely an authentic host, Phil. Best place we can follow you and find you connecting social media-wise, where can we go?
You could just go to noopportunitywasted.com, or you can go to philkeoghanlaride.com.
All right. Well, fantastic, Phil. Best of luck with the film. Thanks for coming on the show, and take care.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to the Neil Haley Show. You're welcome. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment, and oh my gosh, I'm so excited to welcome the program Debbe Dunnings. We all remember her from Home Improvement's Tool Time Girl, but we're going to talk about Debbe Dunnings' Dude Ranch Roundup. Debbe, thanks for calling. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much. It's a mouthful, isn't it? Debbe Dunnings' Dude Ranch Roundup. It's been a big one, but
absolutely. We'll get
eventually
right to it.
People will roll off their tongue.
Exactly. But before we get to that, the experience you had on a Home Improvement, how much fun was that for so many years being the Tool Time Girl?
Well, I will tell you, I stepped into a set the first year as a completely different character, and it was like when I was on Married with Children a couple times, I thought, I can't believe these people get to do this and make money doing this every day. This would be the dream job. So much fun, so much laughter, such a family. And I got into it the first week, and when I left, I was like, oh, I'm never going to see them again. And then the next year, the second year, Pamela had decided to leave. They put out a casting call on the breakdowns, Debbe Dunning type, but not Debbe Dunning. Not nice. So they tried to find me in somebody else, and I looked at that, and I'm like, how come I can't go? They're like, they don't want you. They want someone like you. You already did the show. They cast for 2 weeks. Richard Karn suggested, geez, guys, let's just call her. Let's just have her come back. If that's what we're looking for, we're comparing everybody to her. But they were comparing everybody to me because we had such a great week the first week where I was on the show. So I got lucky. I got to come back, and I nailed it. So I got to be the Tool Time Girl. But I honestly thought I was just coming back for another week on the show. I had not seen the show. Selfishly, I'd only seen the show that I was on. So Pam wasn't on that show. So I had no idea what it was until I went down to wardrobe, and they kept putting clothes up to me. I'm like, seriously, I think I'm only here for next week. She goes, oh, no, you're going to be here for a while. I had no idea. I really was so blind. And I didn't have an agent because I just didn't have one. I had a modeling agent. And when I would read the breakdowns, I'm like, how am I not going out on this? So I had my people at the modeling agency call and say, she wants to come in. She saw me, wants to come in. Yeah. Aggressive.
And it lasted a long time. So you were thinking it was like going to be like the Married with Children, a couple episodes, little shoot, and then it's over.
Yeah.
And it was a long period of time. So really a lucky break in so many ways because you never know what happens in Hollywood in these processes.
No.
Right?
No, you don't. And the first 2 years, I was literally just guest starring. I wouldn't find out until Friday night after the show if I was working the next Monday. So it was a tough 2 years because, as much as I love being there, I made less than anybody, and it wasn't about the money, but it was about the stability. I didn't know if I'd be working next week. I wasn't sure, and I would book like this commercial. They're like, "Oh, Home Improvement has first right of refusal, so they're using you next week." I'm like, "Ugh, couldn't get that commercial." And then when I finally got offered 9 episodes in a row on Friends, they said, "Oh, you better make a decision." I'm like, "Well, I don't find out." I said, "Tim, I don't find out until Friday if I'm even working on Monday. I'm not leaving the show." He goes, "Well, if you go, then I'm just going to tell you I don't think we're going to continue the role." And this is when I finally had an agent. I was working with an agent in Hollywood, because when you're on a show, you can get any agent you want, but without one, it's really hard. And so he said, "Well, whatever decision you make, but if you decide not to do it, I'll make sure I make it up to you, and it will be a little more stable." And so I told my agent, "Oh, I'm not going to take that 9 episodes on Friends." He goes, "And I'm not going to represent you anymore." So guess what? On the 100th episode, I was walking around. I was hosting and interviewing people. They asked me to be a cast member, so Tim kept his word. I like it. So I became a cast member. I've got my own invitation to People's Choice Awards, not just the date, So that's my story.
All right. Let's kind of jump into now the Cowboy Channel, Debbie Dunnings, Dude Ranch Roundup. And I know you're proud to be an American, because I was reading up on some of that stuff. So tell us about this show's premise and why you got involved.
Well, I came up with the concept because I really love being on a horse. I really love being outdoors. And I really feel like I fell in love with Dude Ranches so early on in my life that I've never forgotten about it. And every time I expose, my children or one of my friends to it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, why don't more people do this vacation, this family vacation?" I said, "I don't know." So when I came up with the concept, the owner of RFD and I he said, "Do it. I'll back you. I'll go partners with you, and let's do it." So I started going from Dude Ranch to Dude Ranch, and what I learned was there's so many different things you can do. It's not just riding a horse. The kids have their activities. You have your activities. The men, if they just want to fly fish, if they just want to do something like that, it's simple. The food is fantastic. The Wranglers, you sing, you dance. I mean, think about your daily week. If you go to Hawaii, everybody's laying down on the beach and they're looking at their phones. You can't have a phone in your hand when you're riding a horse. You can't have a phone when there's no reception and you can't make any calls and you can't get any text messages because you're too far out there. And then you see the imaginations happening and you see the creativity coming back, the color coming back in your children's faces. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. The families that go, it's hard because they love a certain Dude Ranch. They return to it and then become friends with all these people, and they make sure they come the same week. I love every Dude Ranch. Every single one is completely different and a different experience. You can go whitewater rafting or you can go mountain climbing. There's different animals at every one. I went to one where you don't even need a wrangler. They're like, "Where are you going to go today?" I'm like, "Well, your horse is ready. See you around 3." And you're on your own. You're completely on your own. Crazy.
Wow, absolutely crazy.
Are you guys still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening. I've been listening the whole time, Debbie, so don't worry.
Okay.
It's very interesting that you talk about the show. I'm a listener, and I'm going to do a follow-up question. So what's your hope for the show? What do you want to get out of this, especially looking at, again, this channel and this show and a ranch, and compared to, let's just say, you talk about the big city and different things like this. What, and the lack of cell phone connection, the real good old cowboy type of way. What is your hope with the show?
I hope that when people plan their next vacation, they consider and they watch the show and say to themselves, "Wow, I had no idea. That looks amazing." There will be so many different Dude Ranches because everyone gets their own half-hour episode, and there's going to be, for everybody, something different. You could watch White Stallion in Arizona and say, "That's what I want." Or you could watch Rainbow Trout and say, "That's what I want." But everybody will have a different need. We're not all made from the same mold. And I hope that people say,
oh my gosh, I had no idea that's what we're doing this year. And if that happens, to me, that would be the best thing, because then it's almost like drinking the Kool-Aid. They would get there, and I know they would feel like I do, the love and the romance. Being on a horse, it's empowering. You
Yes.
get to see the countryside by horse, and you honestly feel strong, and you look around, you're like, okay, the number one thing I feel when I'm at work is I am so blessed to be doing this, and actually this is my job. And to be dancing once a week. I mean, everybody dances and everybody sings, and you do cookouts and you do sleep outs where, okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow. The boys are going to go sleep out, or, the kids are going on a sleep out, and they're going to sleep underneath the stars. They're going to learn so much about themselves. They're going to learn so much about the other kids. They're going to learn so much about the family and how cool this is. That's what I hope. I hope people see it and really are in awe, like, whoa, I had no idea.
Awesome.
That's what I hope.
All right, so Wednesdays, it premieres Wednesdays and also re-airs on Sundays, right? What time on the Cowboy channel on Wednesdays?
Yeah, we're on Wednesdays 9 o'clock Eastern time and 7 o'clock Eastern time on Sundays. And it's on RFD TV, so it takes a little looking for RFD TV, and then it repeats on the Cowboy channel.
All right. Well, thanks for calling, Debbie. Best of luck with your ventures, and it's great catching up and learning about what happened with your big break and everything else. So thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been pretty blessed. Thank you so much for helping me promote my show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Debbie. Take care. Thanks. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay,
You're
too.
listening to the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a minute. We're back to the Neil Haley Show in the Total Celebrity segment, and I tell you what, I wish I had Showtime. I guess there's a plug right off the bat. I wish I had Showtime or had the app, because I've been watching some of the trailers of this show, and it's hilarious. So I'm excited to welcome to the program Shanola Hampton of Shameless on Showtime.
Hi.
Shanola, how are you? And I tell you what.
I'm good. Go get Showtime. What's wrong with you?
What did you say? I don't have Showtime. I know. I don't have Showtime.
I'm going to need you to download it. I'm going to need you, as soon as we get done with this interview, I'm going to need you to go get that and start watching, really, really watching. You're going to love it.
I mean, I'm laughing my head off, and it's because you're breaking so many barriers, and you're looking at a dysfunctional family, Shanola. So for people that have not watched the show, kind of tell us this premise of the show, because it's just unbelievable when you think of a large family and the struggles that they go through, and yet you guys come up with topics that, oh my. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, we really go there. We go there in a lot of ways. It's been 8 seasons, so it's evolved into an entirely different show than where we started. But the premise basically is about the Gallaghers, which is a family that has an alcoholic father and a mother who is absentee, but also now dead. Sorry to spoil it for those of you who need to binge. But and it was up to the oldest daughter, Fiona, played by the wonderful Emmy Rossum, to take care of these kids. And it's about people who are actually struggling every day, not complaining about the struggle, but just trying to make ends meet and trying to put food on the table and trying to pay the bills and keep the lights on. And it's funny, and it's sad, and it's funny and sad, and sometimes it's just sad. So it's a great show, and you go on a great roller coaster ride. And now when you start watching, if you haven't, and you binge, you'll watch the kids on our show go from 9 years old to 18 years old, and you'll get to grow with them, and their storylines will change. And all of the storylines have really evolved, and you get to go through, with my character, Veronica and Kev, their entire relationship. They've been in a relationship the entirety of the show, and you'll get to see them try to have children, what it's like after you have children, try to make ends meet again and own a bar. And that's where you pick up season 8, is they had their bar taken from them, and now they're trying to get that back. And Fiona is in a place, who's played by Emmy Rossum, where it's not about love for her, it's about business. And Frank, played by the wonderful William H. Macy, who is the alcoholic, will now try some days being sober. So it's a really great season 8 is, but even the lead up until season 8, it takes you on a ride, man. It takes you on a journey.
Well, I find this fascinating when you talk about 8 seasons to see the kids grow up being on the set with them. You must develop relationships with them, right? Like, oh my gosh, what's going on with school? What's going on with, especially when you're seeing these kids grow to young adults from when you started with them on the team.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's great about it is we don't talk at all, so we just all kind of do our job and go. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, we are very, very close, and Emma, who plays Debbie, she and I FaceTime each other daily just because I want to see exactly where she is. I'm like her, a mama bear, like an aunt to her. So we have gone through a lot of life together with the kids and also as the adults. Emmy just got married, and I had babies while on the show, and Steve Howie had his twins while we were shooting the show. And like you said, the kids grew up, and relationships, breakups. And we've had a lot of life in 8 seasons together, and we really are a family.
Yeah, and definitely a family. And you see that, again, and you said you talked about the absentee mother and the father of the family. He is absolutely hilarious. People need to check out the trailer. But I would binge watch as well, Shanola. And do you have, where's the best place? Definitely you can binge all this on Showtime. I'm giving another plug to Showtime.
You can binge it on Showtime on demand, but you also Netflix, which is taking on a whole new life. You can binge the first 7 seasons on Netflix, but season 8 is only going to be on Showtime.
Oh, but first 7 seasons are on Netflix. I think I'm going to start catching up. Then I'll download the app because guess what? We have Netflix, and oh my, I think this will be funny.
Yeah,
this will make my wife laugh. Yeah. This will make my wife laugh because we have 5 kids of our own, and our lives are chaotic as can be. My wife finally took a year off of teaching, but we were both working. I'm an entrepreneur and do many different ventures with the radio, television, all that, and our lives are crazy. And maybe by seeing this light, how crazy our lives are, we'll feel a little bit better about ourselves because of where you guys are going.
Believe me, if nothing else, it will make you reflect and be like, it's not so bad.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think of your character in so many ways from starting on the show to now, and that evolution you talked about of having kids and different things which you explained before? Do you feel that your character has grown in these seasons to where you are, or you think?
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's definitely grown and she's definitely changed so much because life has happened, and it's great as an actor to be able to live her life and play it out on TV as she's gone through the ups and downs. She went from not wanting kids at all to really wanting kids, and you'll see this when you've been to not being able to have kids and asking her mother to have sex with her husband to have kids. You'll see that. Yeah, you got a lot of good stuff to look forward to. And then to actually having kids and then having to deal with the after effects after she had kids. So it's been quite a journey to play, and it's been an honor to play her, but it's a lot of evolution has happened. And she's a mom now, and it's really it's a different kind of struggle when you're trying to take care of kids. It's just different. You're always struggling to pay your bills, but when you have kids, you really are responsible for those kids. So she and Kev go through quite a journey, even in the upcoming season, to make sure that they can feed their kids.
Now, would you say also about Veronica in so many ways that she does not want her family to be like the Gallaghers at times, especially being a neighbor and seeing what chaos goes on? Are you becoming more wanting to be the protective one, or do you think it's both you and your... What do you say?
Well, I think that there's certain things that she doesn't want to... But the thing about our show is she would never judge the Gallaghers because everybody's on this path. That there'll be some choices that she verbalizes that she's not happy with some of the things that they may do, but she's not trying to protect them from being like the Gallaghers. We're all in the struggle together, and the Gallaghers and the Balls are family. So it's just, and they help out a lot when it comes to those kids and stuff. So it's never, I don't want you to be like them. It's like, let's all just try to make things happen.
Awesome. Well, you've sold me. We need another show for my wife and I to watch on Netflix. We just finished up Glow, and now we're going to have to go to Shameless. And there's a Shameless plug. There's another Shameless plug I just gave. Tune in this season 8, again, Showtime, Sunday. November 5th. And binge watch if you've not watched any of the seasons. But where, Shanola, can we find information on you and connect with you? Where can we go?
Go to @Shanola Hampton. It's very simple. No weirdness. Just Shanola Hampton.
Awesome. Well, thanks for explaining more about the show. But I tell you what, I definitely am going to start binge watching, and I'll have to tweet to you when I'm watching and learning more about your character. And we'll see once we get to season 8. It'll be a lot of fun. But best of luck on your show and continued success. 8 seasons. Let's
Thank
see
you. To you and
how
your
many
wife
more you can go.
for 5 babies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. All right, take care. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it. All right, see you.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to Neil Haley's show, and we'll be back in just
The Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment. And I'm excited about this guest. Everyone that's a fan of the comic book The Punisher is going to love this coming up on Netflix. So I'm excited to welcome the program, Ben Barnes of The Punisher.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you, Ben? Good morning. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about the story of how you got this role. This has got to be really cool to go against a hero like that and be that villain that's going to be really hated in this show, right?
Well, I don't know. Our take on the series is definitely a very intriguing one. They definitely haven't exactly stuck to the canon of what people might expect if they're huge Punisher fans or huge kind of avid kind of comic book readers. We've definitely shaped and really grounded the series. You know, it's one of the only superhero shows where nobody really has any superpowers, and it's got very complicated characters with very traumatic pasts. They're all kind of exploring different types of loss and trauma. And we have a main character, a hero who is really an anti-hero with suffering from PTSD. He's lost his family. So it's a very kind of twisted, interesting, take on a character who lives in the kind of superhero universe. So it was, it's a really kind of interesting take on it. And, I auditioned in Los Angeles, and because, Marvel keeps everything so secret, you're not actually auditioning with scenes from the show itself. They'll write these scenes specifically for you. And in my case, they wrote a fantastic speech about a kid who was beating up another kid with a baseball bat. And I just thought this scene was so fantastic and terrifying, but it was about 7-year-olds, and so I called them up. I said, if this speech is in the show, I'll do it. And they said it's not, and I said, okay, I'll do it anyway.
When you think about, you said this character, the Punisher, and explain a little bit about the comic book series for somebody that might not understand, especially if they're going to get into this show and like the superhero. Tell about that main character and then about your character.
So, the Punisher is a character who has come back from war in the Middle East, and his family essentially have been assassinated, and it's basically a mystery story as to getting to the bottom of who is responsible for this. But along the way, because he's suffering from PTSD and a lot of kind of personal struggles, his sort of morality becomes compromised, and he sort of takes out trouble wherever he finds it, wherever he feels that he finds moral ambiguity. He feels it's his job to become, judge and jury and be the vigilante that sort of takes care of it. And that's how we saw him actually when the character cameoed in the Daredevil series. We saw him behaving in this way, but now he's the sort of the hero of our show, the lead of our show, and so we go much more into his psyche and his psychology and how these things that he is going through, and then we meet a variety of other characters around him who are dealing with coming back from war and suffering in different ways by starting veterans groups. There's one character who is trying to reenact, the situations that he found himself in at war because that makes him feel like there's something close to him that he understands. And then I play the character called Billy Russo, who was Frank Castle, who is the Punisher, Frank Castle's best friend. from the armed forces, and is now running a private military operation, a sort of a Blackwater type company. So he's become a very kind of slick businessman type. So and he's kind of Frank Castle's best friend, as it were.
Interesting. Okay, and so that your character is, in a way, you said that the characters are a lot different in a way to figure out who's good and who's evil in this. It sounds like then, right? In a way.
Absolutely, yeah. I think a lot of these shows are very much set up like, okay, so here's the guy with the hood or the cape, and so he's the guy you're rooting for, and then here's the guy who is, kind of slamming someone's head in a car door the first time you ever see him, and so he's not good news. And our show, I think, because our protagonist is a lot more morally ambiguous and you're never quite sure whether you're supposed to be even rooting for him, then I think the other characters all kind of live in this kind of grey, morally ambiguous area too. And so you're, along with the mystery of trying to find out kind of what happened to his family, you're also kind of intrigued by all these characters and trying to work out which one, whose side you're on, really.
And what's happening is we can't give up, let people know what's going to happen. But your character going with the main character in a way, we'll see if that relationship continues to stay the same, right? Or change.
Absolutely. I think the closer, more intimate people's relationships and friendships, the more easily they can be betrayed. Really, really avid fans of comics know what the name Billy Russo is. So I think it's. I think that there's clues along the way.
But for people that are just tuning in, because again, a lot of people go from the big screen or Netflix, not the comic, and that's what's so fun about this.
Exactly, and for those people,
yeah.
For those people, there'll be a much more kind of slowly drawn out experience of finding out what these men become.
Absolutely, and I love the idea that you talk about the PTSD and bring that out. That's great. Marvel made a character like that struggles. A lot of superheroes don't struggle. A lot of them aren't able to go through lots of hard times. Now, people, especially military, thinking about PTSD, they can really say, oh, wow, I got a character I can really go to understand their pain and their sorrow and what they're dealing with.
Absolutely, and I think that was the whole ethos of, the Netflix Marvel collaboration on these shows. I mean, it was kind of, I don't want to say revolutionary because that's a very big word, but in the second episode of Daredevil, there was this incredible fight sequence in which the character of Daredevil starts to become very tired the more that he fights. And you realize that if you've ever watched a fight on the street, after 10 minutes, the people are exhausted. And they would finally show that superheroes are people. And they showed this fantastic sequence. And I think it was kind of really interesting that we watched this character become exhausted. And I think this is just taking that one step further. It's pushing that into people's past, and people are mentally exhausted, and people are stressed, and people are complicated, and people suffer. You never know what somebody that you're talking to is dealing with in their own lives, and so I think this kind of pushes that a little bit further, within that same kind of universe.
Well, fantastic, Ben. I know people need to connect with you in some way, especially social media-wise, because you know how comic book fans are, and how they're so into the social media and the connections and all that. Where can we connect with you, Ben? Best place to connect with you?
I have an Instagram and a Twitter. It's just at Ben Barnes, and I have a backlog of little photos and videos that I take on set. I took them on set on Westworld and on The Punisher, and but I'm always embargoed. They never let you post anything until the show is out, because you don't want to kind of ruin any surprises. And so so I can drip feed them after the shows come out.
Well, congratulations on the success of Westworld and being part of that as well, Ben. I wanted to let you know about that as well, and when
thanks so much.
Things are going on. It's again another very interesting show. Everyone needs to tune in to The Punisher on Friday, November 17th. It'll be available on Netflix. Thanks again for calling, Ben. Best of luck, and thanks for coming on the show. Take care.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
We're back, the Neil Haley Show, on the Total Celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome to the program Stephen J. Rubin, author of the Twilight Zone Encyclopedia. Stephen J., thanks for calling. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Let's kind of, really jump into specifically enough why you wrote the book. You've written some other books as well, and you've directed, you've been involved in Hollywood in certain ways. What made you want to write this book?
Well, I was involved in a biopic about the life of Rod Serling. It may go hopefully soon, but there's this mountain of research that was done about the background of Rod Serling in the show, and I'm really a big fan of the show, so I know about the other books. A lot of them are critical studies where they analyze the actual episodes and talk about the motivations and things. But I thought that the big thing that was missing were the people involved with the Twilight Zone. Not just Rod Serling, of course, who was a genius, but all the actors, those wonderful faces that made up the 156 episodes of the show. And a lot of them would be lost to history. And I come from a history background. I love history. And I love these actors and all these behind-the-scenes people. Plus, there was so much kind of behind-the-scenes information that hadn't been called. A lot of people hadn't been interviewed. And, of course, collecting the photographs, as many rare ones as possible. It was an interesting challenge for me, and it took a while. It took over 3 years.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Over 3 years it took to go ahead and write these this book and looking at specific things. Now, were you a Twilight Zone fan growing up as well?
Well, it's interesting. I was 8 when the show debuted in '59, so I wasn't watching dramatic television in those days. I was kind of a cartoon watcher. That was my deal, as kind of most 8-year-olds are. So I wandered into my parents' living room, actually, one night, and they had an episode on about this private club and this motor mouth and this kind of stuffy guy bet the guy $500,000 that he couldn't talk for a year. And I remember as an 8-year-old being really freaked out by the concept of not talking. So, and it's an episode called The Silence. It's with Fran Chatone and Liam Sullivan. And that always stuck with me. And then throughout college, it was, the Zone was always on in syndication. And then I actually got more interested in the episodes as I got involved in Hollywood and learned how they influence everybody. I would argue that every science fiction, fantasy, and horror writer, author, producer, director in the last 60 years has been influenced by the Zone.
Well, I absolutely believe you're right about that, Jay. Stephen J. That it's just like that they're influenced in so many ways. And when you think about specifically enough each episode and how very strange but also in ways you can kind of look and say this maybe could have happened to me as well, Stephen J. Especially the whole storyline that gets to that point, and then this could have happened,
Well, Rod Serling came out of live television. He wanted to tell morality plays about the common man. And at that time in television, the network executives and the sponsors avoided controversy at all costs. He would be constantly told, you can't do this, you can't do that. It was kind of laughable at one point. And he always wanted to tell the Emmett Till story of this African-American teenager who was hung for whistling at a white woman back in the late 50s. And they said, you can make the episode, but you have to do it with a Mexican. And he was outraged by comments like that. So he decided to kind of disguise his stories about issues in the world of science fiction and fantasy. So you have an episode like Eye of the Beholder, which is about this woman under bandages who's having her face adjusted so she can fit into society, the ultimate conformity story. And it turns out that the society is on another planet and everybody has a pig face. Well, this is a story about racism and all of that, but it's disguised on another planet.
Yeah, most definitely. And so he kind of tried to connect specifically what was going on in the world during that time compared to, and make it into a science,
fantasy world. So that's really cool. And so he really wanted to kind of educate and have themes involved in some of the storylines, then, it sounds like.
Well, Rod Serling was kind of the first guy who really got television's power. I mean, he sat there and realized that you can go on the air and reach more people in 20 minutes than all the authors of all the books in the history of